Hello everyone, happy Friday. It is Insta Live on Fry. This is Audrey Button from Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes. I use the pronoun she, her, hers, and it is July. So we're gonna be talking about mostly Title IX related topics this month, if you saw the schedule. So before we begin, just a couple things. Just a content warning. Some of the material I'll be discussing may be sensitive to some, so please take care of yourself however you need to. And a disclaimer. So the views and opinions expressed in this video are not necessarily those of Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes, but of those in the video. And so, with that, we can go ahead and get started. So we're just going to do a very basic overview of Title IX and some history quick. And for those of you who don't know what Title IX is, this will hopefully be a good introduction, or if you do kind of know what it is, this will hopefully give you a little more information, or this might be completely new to you. So, if you haven't seen the rest of the topics for the month, we're going to be talking about the Title IX changes, which you may or may not know of, that occurred last year, and were enacted last year. And we're going to go over Title IX investigation and that process, making a report, and then what other options you have for reporting. So make sure you tune in every other Friday this week, or you can watch it obviously at a later time, because it's always available afterwards on our Instagram page and our YouTube channel. So to go ahead and get started, we're kind of just, Title IX is a federal civil rights law in the United States, and is a part of the Education Amendments of 1972. So this is a really important person, and I'm going to pull up a picture. So as you can see here, this is Patsy Mink. Patsy, by the way, was the first woman of color and first Asian American woman elected to Congress, and she was elected to Congress in 1964. She is a really important person in terms of Title IX and anything Title IX related. As, we'll kind of talk about that in a second. She was a member of the U.S. House of Representatives, and she was from Hawaii. And she co-authored the Title IX Amendment of the Higher Education Act of 1972. So that is Patsy Mink there. And so let me get back to here. So, Patsy Mink is a really important person when it comes to Title IX and why Title IX exists today. And so Title IX states, this is the law that is written under Title IX. It states that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. So you might be wondering what that kind of means, but you can pull out, obviously no one should be discriminated against based on their sex, which we'll also talk a little bit more about that soon too, and be excluded from any sort of educationally related, any program that gets or receives any sort of federal assistance. So that is hopefully protecting certain groups of people from being discriminated against in the educational system. And so I know when people think of Title IX, they tend to just think of colleges and like higher education, like universities, but Title IX also protects K through 12 public education. And we'll also talk about that more in a second here. So it's really important to recognize the importance of Title IX, why it was enacted in the first place. And I want to point this out. And this was actually, Title IX was recently in the news just a couple weeks ago. And on June 16th of 2021, the U.S. Department of Education released a statement, and this is really important, is that they specifically stated that transgender students are protected under Title IX. And that's really important to recognize, because as you heard me state with the original law, it says on the basis of sex, but it's also important to recognize, the different gender identities and expressions and how people identify, but it's important to recognize that all people are protected no matter how they are identifying. So, they released a statement recently that transgender students are protected under Title IX. So to kind of, give you a better idea what Title IX is, and we'll kind of talk more about it next week with the Title IX changes that were put in place last year. And there's these 9 things that you should know about Title IX, and this is from Know Your 9. They're a really great resource about Title IX and everything Title IX, including K through 12 specifically, and also college level, what it is and what you can do and how it protects you as a student. Okay, so the first one that I'm going to talk about is, so the Title IX is a civil right that prohibits sex discrimination in education, which I already talked about. So it prohibits any sort of discrimination based on your identity or how you identify. So number 2, Title IX applies to all students, regardless of gender identity, and, that's really also important to recognize, okay? And then the third one, schools may not retaliate against someone filing a complaint. So a complaint is, stating or sharing or reporting that something had happened to you. So you're considered, they'll call you a complainant, and it's kind of like the legal term for that. But that's the person making the alleged statement, is the, alleged victim or survivor, or however you identify, but that's the person bringing this forward, okay? So the complainant. I like to always describe those terms because people don't always necessarily know what they mean. And so on the opposite side, the respondent is the person who's the alleged perpetrator, okay? So schools may not retaliate against someone filing a complaint and must keep complainants safe from other retaliatory harassment. So if you come forward and say, you've been perpetrated against in any sort of way, the school cannot retaliate against you in any shape or form, and it is required by law to protect you and make you feel safe in your school environment. Okay? And that can look different depending on what you need, or, that kind of thing. So changing classes, finding a different place to live, or whatever it may be, the school is required by law to make you feel safe. So number 4 is schools should ensure that no student has to share campus spaces with their abuser. So especially depending on if this alleged perpetrator is found guilty, they might be expelled, they might be removed from campus, or they might have to, they're going to issue a no contact order, but it depends on what that looks like. But they're required to make sure that you feel safe in any space that you are on campus. So not only like your dorm room or your living situation, but in class or wherever you're going to go hang out, or if you're going to the library, whatever it may be, they need to make sure that you feel safe and that you don't have to run into your abuser. Okay, so number 5 is schools must be proactive in ensuring that your campus is free from sex discrimination. So it's all about prevention. So they have to provide certain programming and information about not only Title IX, but, sexual violence, interpersonal violence, anything like that, and educating their students about it, and making sure they know what their resources are and their options are under Title IX, but also, in general, to make sure that they feel safe and heard. And we're going to go into this in a couple weeks, so I don't want to go too much into it, but that's their duty as under Title IX, is to make sure that their students are aware of these things and what's going on campus, and that they know what their options are, okay? So then we get into number 6. So they must have a procedure for handling complainants of sexual harassment and violence. So like I said, we'll be talking about that more, but like I said, they need to have a detailed, sort of thing explaining what this looks like and how it will be handled, and the options, like I kind of already said before. So, number 7 is schools cannot discourage you from continuing your education. They cannot tell you to leave, especially, if you do feel unsafe or you did make a report, they cannot discourage you from leaving the school, can discontinue your education, whatever it may be, because you have the right and equal rights to education. Okay? And then number 8, all schools receiving federal funding, including public K through 12 schools and a majority of colleges, are subject to Title IX, like I mentioned before. So if they're receiving any sort of federal assistance, then they need to follow the rules of Title IX. Okay? And then lastly, number 9, schools can issue no contact directives to prevent the alleged perpetrator from approaching or interacting with you. So like I said before, they can issue that no contact order to make you feel safe on campus and to prevent that person from interacting with you. So I didn't want to go into too much Title IX because I know Title IX can be a little overwhelming, a little confusing, but hopefully that kind of gave you a general overview of what Title IX is. And we'll talk more about it in the next coming weeks because we have 5 Fridays this month, so we have a lot of time to talk about it. So next week we'll be talking about those changes and what that looks like. And then we'll obviously get into more like what that investigation process looks like, your reporting options, and then of course other reporting options, because Title IX is not actually the only option that people have. And we'll talk about that more. Okay, so thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you have a great weekend. So make sure you tune in for the rest of the month, and we'll see you then. Thank you.